there's a lot of ways people can have sort of authority that makes someone feel less than. How do we make
Hmm.
us come to partnership? Nobody's better or worse than anybody else, in my opinion. We're just different. How do
Hmm.
we respect these differences and what's bigger than us? So that trust piece is so vital. And I feel really fortunate that in the first 10, 12 years, I probably had some people that just really didn't trust. They didn't trust themselves, frankly, and they didn't trust
Hmm.
others. Usually it's some vulnerability. When people aren't trusting, it's their own vulnerability that they're trying to hide, my opinion.
Hmm.
But getting to a place where I can be open and really trust people with my heartstrings and things that matter to me, we can go do great stuff together because they know I got them too.
Welcome to the Moxie Podcast. I am thrilled to have Chris here today. And we, over this month of April, are talking about just rhythms of leaders and what it looks like in our life. And so we're just going to have a beautiful conversation. So welcome, Chris, to the call.
Thanks. I'm excited to have whatever it's going to be.
I know. I always like to surprise my listeners and my guest, and there's no prescribed question. So it is different every time for sure.
I
So,
think that basically is life. There's not,
right.
I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I wrote a post that said, "Hey, did anybody else missing the chapters as how to survive and have a business keep going in the pandemic?" I couldn't find that in my handbook that they gave me, right? We're making it all up all the time.
It is so true. I think that's like a beautiful start because, well, one, I feel like we all learned crisis management in a way different way during the pandemic. But
An immersion course, you could call it. Yeah.
yes, and real time, and we all did it differently, and we could all write sub chapters there, I feel like. But
Totally.
I did on the Moxie podcast. So for those who actually have been listening for a while, I actually did a series specifically on Ripple. So it's on
What?
some of your yes.
I got to go
Yes.
listen. I had no idea. Okay, first surprise of the day. Got it.
Surprise. You have
Hmm.
to go listen. We put it on YouTube. I took some of a couple of your chapters and just
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about things that really stood out to me. So didn't sum up the whole book. I kept saying buy the book, buy the book. I think in all of our show notes, I like have links to your book. I'm like, please buy the book.
That's so awesome. Can people
Um
hear me blushing? I think they can.
it was like it's been really cool because as I do teach in leadership, higher ed and leadership. And so it's just been really fun to apply it there and then also apply it to my team in Kenya and utilize it as what you have kind of like a field book. So I would love for you to kind of talk about one, just who you are, a little bit a
Yeah.
background. I like to ask what you're best known for. So you can answer that in any way. What are you best known for? And then maybe tell us a little bit what led you to even starting to write the book Ripple.
Hmm. The first thing that popped into best known for is like sourdough pancakes that are an ancient family recipe that I make on a regular basis with my family. However, in terms of the work context, I think this is the 20th year of establishing the company called the Trebuchet Group.
That's
And
awesome.
so, yeah, it's kind of looking back on what? How did that go so fast? Even as we had the challenges in 2008 and the pandemic, and they've just been continually to this. It's a roller coaster, and it's
For
been a
sure.
really cool roller coaster. So I think probably let's see, best known at. I'm thinking probably that's. I mean, the authorship is helpful because that sort of helps people connect when I'm not around. I think I'm best known for someone who really can listen deeply and be very present with people. And I've had
Mm.
that given to me as a gift. And so when I can give that as a gift along with experience around the edges to have a great conversation, I get to work with and partner with leaders and teams to help them do their best to create a world where everyone is thriving collectively and individually at work.
Mm. Would you say, I'm curious, would you say that's like one of the number one struggles for leaders that they have to learn how to listen better?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's around, well, we tend to, it's not who's being quiet in the room, it's who's
Yeah.
raising their hand to give the answer. I mean, there's a lot of things in the systems that we grow up in which don't support the sort of leadership that really makes a difference. I mean, yeah,
Mm.
sure, initiative and drive, that's all great. And how are we making sure everyone in the room is able to fully contribute? How are we having a collective picture of what we want to go do that we don't have to talk about all the time just to keep on track? The things we're talking about are to encourage each other, make sure we're making progress, but not to realign all the time. because we
Yeah.
all have that same picture. To do that is really listening and honoring people. And sometimes it could be the thing they really want to do or be is not what we're doing. And that's okay. That's
Mm,
totally okay in figuring out how can I support someone to go do that? Because I wouldn't, it would be a little bit weird to have a company that works on thriving individually and collectively say, you're trapped here, you have to stay.
yeah.
Instead of, wow, if you're going to thrive individually and we thrive together, there may be something else that's bigger calling you, and that's okay.
Yeah. What led you okay, so 20 years. Congratulations. That's so
Crazy. Yes,
awesome.
thank you. Yeah.
I feel like it flies. We just celebrated our 10 years last year and I was like, where did the decade
Congratulations.
go?
Yes. So I just had
Thanks.
two of those. Poof, poof. Right. So
Just a little bit behind you, learning from you.
thanks.
Where did you even start there? Was it just a natural progression of like, I'm going to start this business, or was it really felt out of a deep calling, or what even
Mm.
think deep back 20 years?
Oh, no, it feels like it's yesterday. So it's very prominent. So uh, sometimes I introduce myself as a recovering engineer, not to diss engineers. The engineers are cool. I
Yeah.
have deep engineering and systemic thinking is like built into me. And the part that I saw or was connected or tuned to was how are we working together to get things done? Because if we can do that well, I was on a team where it wasn't a good team. It wasn't working well, and I couldn't use my strengths. I didn't like coming to work. I felt worthless. Felt like I didn't matter.
Mm,
And I was on another team where we had these things, and it wasn't motherhood and apple pie, and it wasn't just like butterflies and roses. It was that we could connect, and people looked at things and said, "Hey, that's your kryptonite. I gotcha. And could you pick
mm,
this one up for me?" And we're challenging each other to be better in what we're doing. I love that. I could use all my strengths. So through my career at the beginning, so I was in the Air Force for 8 years and got to learn really a lot about teamwork and leadership and how could I leave someplace and it would keep getting better instead of crashing and me saying, wow, look at that. I was such a great leader. They only could do it when I was there.
mm,
That's not great leadership to me. At least that's what
yeah.
I thought. So worked through some things, worked into corporate America. I was with a large semiconductor company, which went through a downturn. And so I got released. I got a year's severance, which was a huge gift, and said, these things that I was doing, like I was the director of quality, and I'd have a knock on the door, and somebody would come. They look both ways. They'd shut the door. They'd come in and they say, I know you directed quality, but I've kind of heard that like people who have conversations with you are clearer and they know what to do. And I'd say, well, quality is everything. So of course, this is totally legit. And I had no idea at the time that I was essentially doing coaching in the way that I was helping enable people's best, but it was helping them struggle. It wasn't me fixing it for them. And so as it came out of this thing, I took that time, that probably about 6 months. And when I got released, say this was just before February 2002, and that morning I said, you know what, I want to do the kinds of things I was doing inside a company without necessarily being limited by the constraints of the company.
Mm,
Like if I said something to a level of leadership above me and they were like, yeah, that's not your job, or ask a question or desire something that's more, that wasn't my responsibility. I can ask those kind of questions from where I'm coming based on what I believe people are trying to go for, not my image, but can I
mhm,
open space in a room or a conversation or even a leader's heart to where would you really like to go? And that's where I think there's a lot of staying power. So it was sort of this natural evolution. Oh, you get to hear the train that goes right down the middle of Fort Collins, Colorado, and just built the company from there. And it's
mm,
just been a slow climb. We're just 7 people plus people around
yeah.
us that we work with.
Yeah. I love hearing the origin story because it started, it always starts from obviously some sort of passion or like, oh my gosh, I do this already and I can make this happen. I think that first step is always the scariest. It almost seems like you kind of just got pushed into that first
I
step a
did
little
get, it
bit.
was a pretty hard nudge. And I will say that the first angel investor I had was my wife, who kept a corporate job. So she had, we had food, we had medical
Yeah.
care. I could kind of learn it probably took about 3 years for me to figure out what the heck I really could do. So,
Yeah.
maybe I really have 17 years of experience with 3 years of a start. But
Yeah.
it's
Well,
pretty
we
neat
would
to be
all
close
say
to
that.
calling. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I have what, 10 years with like 6 years of a start or
Yeah.
something.
Right.
Um, that's awesome. Okay, so one of the things that I love to talk about on Moxie because we really share just courageous stories by ordinary people. This platform is to inspire individuals who are really in all walks of life and all over the world.
Nice.
But are thriving to be leaders, are leaders. I believe everyone has those qualities within them, right? We're all made with innate talents that the Lord gives us, and how we put that out in the world all looks different. But I love how you also described like understanding the team dynamics and whatnot of how you can support, someone can support you versus, trying to get something else out of you that is maybe not your strength. So I would love to talk about that when you do meet with a team, or even what you've seen in your own team. And they're kind of starting out with you. What are some practices, even like sitting down in practices to acknowledge your own personal strengths and those around you? Because I think obviously we have assessments and tools. I'm Gallup certified and all these other things, and love to pull tools. But I don't think people sit down enough and reflect on like, oh wow, like I really like to do this. I think my opinion is the tendency is we kind of, just go in the box that we're pushed into and we kind of sit there. So how would you get people outside of that to start looking at what they're truly made to be and to see their team around them as well? It's kind of a big question.
That is
What are,
it's sort of a big question. Yeah, kind of just the whole thing, trying to wrap it all up. That's okay.
yeah.
Well, there's a couple elements, I guess, in there. One of them is, and you talk about assessments. I mean, I think assessments, um, I was just talking with the team and they were, it's a tool. If it was, you have a very sharp chisel, you can make beautiful wood carvings, or you could hurt someone or yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of assessments can come across as judging you against a standard that you didn't set up, or that you're
Mm,
good or bad. And there's lots of things in society that does that. You're enough, you're not, or I'm not this, so therefore I can't be. I think really allowing people to feel that they're enough. So part of it, I would say, as a responsibility as a leader, not the hierarchical, I'm telling you what to do leader, but someone who's willing to step out on the ice first.
mm,
I need to be vulnerable first. I need to be the one to say, hey, I struggle with this. Not as a like a group therapy session or just gushing on someone, but yeah, this is hard for me, or this is a difficulty for me, so that they can feel like it's okay for them to be like, yeah, this is hard for me too. Conversely, I think the other thing that's really just it's fascinating to me is that I think, and there's probably books written on this someplace, but it's sort of developed, reverse engineered it, I'd say, where people don't know their strengths because
mm.
in my body, it's normal. This
Yeah.
is not hard for me to do. I talk with leaders and they'll say, well, you got to do X, Y, and Z. And I'd stop them and say, well, you don't have to. Well, yeah, you do. That's just like breathing. And I go, well, I know people who don't. And then they'll say something like, yeah, I wonder why they choose not to.
Mm,
It's kind of a dangerous place to be. And it's completely obliviousness, right? I know that's easy for me, so it must be easy for you too. And if you can't do it, you're just choosing not to versus saying, wow, I'm exceptional in this area. This is something that I bring that few people would have. And what is yours? And so getting in
mm,
that space of not only being vulnerable about challenges, but also being open about, hey, these are the things that I think I can do pretty well. I can bring their innate qualities, some things that are learned, some things I've been trained in. And how do I bring those to benefit us? And what are you bringing? So
mm.
looking for those things that people go, that's easy. That's actually a really rich zone because that's your strength. People don't know it. And therefore, the other challenge is if that's my strength and that's what I do and I get good results, it's easier to overdo it there. So a
Yeah.
lot of the conversations are where are the challenges? What are your strengths? And by the way, where can those go bad? Where can you overdo them? Because if we all have an awareness of that, I think it's I can help you. And like I said, with the kryptonite, like the thing that you
Right.
dissolves you, I can pick it up and run with it, and vice versa. I have members
Yeah.
on my team that they can fill out forms like crazy. That is like it just drains
Ugh.
this life energy out of my body. And I get these questions like, hey, could you go talk to 200 people tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And they'd go like, yeah, I did totally freak out. I need a month, right? So let's bring the strengths together. That's
Yeah.
a lot of what makes great teams.
Yeah, I love the aspect of like coming in like almost teachable spirit with curiosity of like what are you good at versus I never thought of that like of why not. I'm sure I've done like absolutely have done this of like why aren't they doing X, Y, and Z?
Mm.
Um And then as I've gotten older and led a lot of people, I think I've realized, oh yeah, we're all we're all made very differently. And I think, and then if we come with that approach, there allows for so much grace and patience and understanding. If we can see like people's true light, that they bring to the
Hmm.
table. I really love
Hmm.
that.
I think
Okay.
too, there's one other thing that I want to follow up on, if that's cool. Um,
It's cool.
like one of the things that I'll be a little vulnerable about, as we were going through the pandemic, I realized that some of my kids, based on the feedback, there's like, hey, they have qualities you could label as ADHD that prevents some
Mm,
of this high level executive functioning, which is, anyway, we went through the whole thing, and I'm looking at these on this piece of paper, these 10 different symptoms. And I'm like, hey, if you have these symptoms, does that mean you have ADHD? And the counselor said, well, only if it's more than 6 months. I'm like, well, does like 50 years count? So realizing that the things that I innately have done or can't do are part of that. And there's a really strong message to me when other people don't
mm,
lose their keys, and um, they can just organize things on a drop of, it's just like everybody else. I mean, school system is all built around people with executive function, and I didn't have it. I didn't know that at the time. I just coped. But there was a huge message that I took away that was like,
wow.
I am not good enough. The easiest thing, people are like, this is cake, this is simple. It's sort of like living left-handed in a right-hand world kind of thing. I mean, I had
Yeah.
no, so I internalized that message. And I know that's nothing like some of the messages people get to internalize from society. And it helps me, I think, identify with. I think we all have some messages about how we're not good enough, or the body we're in doesn't work the way it should, or the color of our skin, or the quality of our thinking, or whatever those things are. And so that I sit in that to have an appreciation for how inadvertently we kind of hold each other down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how can, as a leader, how can I help us let go of that and help us really exercise those strengths that are part of us?
Thanks for sharing that. I think that goes into like really nicely into like the holistic health that I wanted to kind of talk about and just rhythms we have.
Yeah.
I've been really challenging our team, especially this year, because I've been really bad at being like, don't practice what I preach, like what I do, or like, don't do what I do, but I want
Yeah.
you to have a life and work balance, but don't
Yes.
do what I
Yes.
do.
But
And I
I'm
stay up.
but I have to sacrifice for you to do that because I feel bad if you don't get it.
Yes. Yes. So I've actually
Not that I
this
would
year.
ever feel that feeling. I recovering rescuer as well. I do my best to not rescue people. It's out of a good
Oh,
heart, and it doesn't always help me or them. So
yeah, yeah. And this year I said I'm going to prioritize my health, both like mental, physical, spiritual, all holistic health of me. So I've been very proud. I've been back at my CrossFit. I'm a CrossFitter. So back at
oh,
my CrossFit.
you're looking pretty good. So yeah.
Thanks, thanks. I feel strong. I just feel wanted to be strong again and back in scripture and all these different things. So it's just been really great for me. But it's also been really challenging because I'm like, well, I want to start early, which means I have to get to bed early. And that's like has not been my practice for like the last 10 years. I feel like that went out the window. My morning self went out the window a long time ago. So having to practice and get back into that has been really important for me. But I've been having these conversations with our team of like, how can we go deep rather than wide? How can we make sure we're
Mm,
focusing? And because Amani Collective as a whole, my company is a company of multiple brands, and a lot of times we overwork because we're working within all of them. So I've been wanting to restructure of like, okay, yeah, let's go deep, and you're not going to have to worry about this brand anymore. You're not going to have to worry about this. So been trying to make sure that we take less like take things off the plate, but it's more of quality, because they're working on that one thing. All that to say, to circle back to my question, I would
yes.
say, what is some rhythms that you have in your life that really keep you sane, that I mean, and keep you in a healthy place to lead so many others? Because
Hmm.
that energy we bring to a stage or that energy we bring to a room is so important. And
Yeah.
I can think back of times where like I was not in the right headspace, but I still showed up, right? And still had to power through. And so making sure that I'm to my core in the right space for people is so important. So that's authentic, right? And doesn't feel
Yeah.
so inauthentic. So I would love to hear kind of some, yeah, practices that you have or rhythms you have in your life that you feel really help.
I definitely want to share, and I'm intensely curious about like, is there something that you've gotten some success around? Maybe it's the CrossFit, maybe something else that's helped you establish a rhythm that you are enjoying.
Yeah, for specifically this year, it's like rediscovering my mornings again. I am a complete morning person, and being a mother of three, like it is the only, I would say it's the best way to describe it is like serenity. It is peaceful. It is the time where like everyone is still sleeping, so I can go work out and come back
Oh, okay.
and listen, without even but even like as I'm just having myself. Like I'm very outgoing,
Mm,
right? So I love people. And I don't mind that as well, but I didn't realize how much I needed my time. And so I think that has really just like mentally helped me start the day when I start early instead of waking up and immediately going into a meeting.
nice, nice.
So that and a lot of water. I feel like water has helped me a lot. Drinking lots of water, filling my body, just normal stuff, normal
Those
stuff
are
here.
two really basic things that I think are so vital. I mean, if you don't do
Yeah,
those things, it's not going to be very sustainable. So yeah,
right.
I well the thing that so during the we were talking briefly about that my wife and I took a 4 month sabbatical after 20 years in the business almost, and really unplugged. I never checked in on my team. They called me once in the middle, say, "Hey, we got this sticky thing. We can we take you to lunch and pick your brain?" But
Mhm.
really, I really trusted because of the work we'd done ahead of time, was we can help the team. There were still struggles and challenges during that time, though. The ground of health, so it's similar to what you're saying, was something that we established. So we we hired a trainer. Actually, we went through sort of this rotating thing until we found one that was really good that stuck around. And so we're doing between 2 and 3 times a week. We're going to the gym early, 6:30 in the morning,
Uh-huh.
and it's mostly just strength training, although not the bulk, just to get, like you said, feel strong. And
Yeah.
it took like 3 months before we felt, we were like, is this working? I don't think so. And then he ran us through some other things, some exercises, and I was like, oh, okay. I can see these little things we've been doing have actually built up to the point where I have stronger core, which was, I'm standing
Yeah.
up now. I stand up all day. There's
Yeah.
good things to do there. So that has been something that's really helped us, even to the point where like today we rode our bikes in. I have an electric bike that the electric part's not working.
I
So,
love those.
so
Oh, but the
I have an,
electric part isn't working.
yeah. So it's extra heavy, and my wife's boost, she was kind. She didn't boost it very much, but I was like, I'm getting a really good workout right now coming to work.
Yeah.
But just
Yeah,
trying to
you
be in
are.
nature, at least part of every day, going for walks, working out at the gym and getting stronger have been things that have really supported us. And then we rotated through a number of different sort of practices, trying things on, different kinds of meditation, different kinds of
Mm-hmm.
prayer, different kinds of sort of thinking about just being quiet and
Mm-hmm.
centering. And those have been really helpful as I discover, rediscover, continue to reuse. I'm going to do this forever kind of guy, and like try it for a while. And then I'm like, what else would be even better or different?
Right.
So giving
Yeah,
myself permission to switch up those spiritual practices has been great for me.
yeah, I love that because I think there's chapters in our life that need, yeah, certain other things rather than the other chapter. I was doing a visualization practice this past weekend at a retreat that I was at, and it was so cool because they were just like, I want you to just like think and visualize a time that you just had complete joy.
Mm,
Um and it Yeah, it was just really cool. And then to name it, like to name that moment. And it was like me and my family and my kids on the beach. We live on the coast of Mombasa, and there's a special beach we go to and camp at. And it was just so peaceful, them running and
nice.
just being, and to like put myself and feel that and be there, and just like all these things that we can do to like at least calm our nerves. I just my second daughter, she has uh like my middle, she has some anxiety, like she has some anxious tendencies, and so she just had a
Mm,
day. And just even like 2 hours ago, I like sat, I was just like on her level, sat with her and just breathed with her, breathed through it. And just like breathing,
mm.
most simplest thing, breathing does so
Oh,
much for us when we can
it,
just be like, hey, I just need to calm down, like have long breaths. And it was so cool to see, like, it's been interesting as a mother to see some of my tendencies. My older, like now I know how to regulate, anxiety and different things, but to see
mhm.
that in a young kid, and then to be able to like sit and help her learn how to regulate at a young age. I was never taught that. I had to learn that as I got older. So I
Yep.
think it's
Yep.
something where I'm like, I want to make sure I pass that down to her to know that it is okay. Like we're okay. Let's just like step away
That's
and take a
huge.
deep breath, you know?
That's so huge. Yeah, we actually have been doing a thing. I mean, we do sort of highs and lows for the day when we're going around
Yeah.
our table every day when we're all together. And we did some prayers, and then some of the kids were like, I don't know if I like these this way, or it doesn't really speak to me. And so lately we've been doing a grateful breath.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're just sometimes we're holding hands, sometimes just sitting there, and we just take a breath in on like the count of four, hold it for one, and out in seven. And I don't count out loud, but that's what I'm doing, and I just take a breath and then hold it,
Yeah.
and it's just the whole room just settles,
Yeah.
and we're together.
If you're listening, I hope you just took a grateful breath because
Mm,
I feel like it just that like can, I
mm.
mean, it can change your day within seconds. Like you can just really maneuver. So I think that's important to have. I mean, these are so basic things, but I think they're great reminders. Like again, moving your body is so
Yeah,
important.
water,
Being
breathing, moving. What else do we cover?
yeah, basic things, guys, that we just like again don't care for ourselves and we give. And you can still be an amazing servant leader. And but if we don't, I always tell people about self-sustainability. Like, yeah, if we don't care for ourselves, man, we're
Hmm.
not going to last and we won't be able to do the impact we're doing in our work and wherever we're at in the world. But
Absolutely.
um I want to touch on Ripple because
Okay.
again, you're going to go listen or you
Yeah,
don't
I
have to
got to
listen.
hear.
I
I'm
basically I
excited. This
basically
is
just
cool.
recap what you talk about. So it's just your words.
That's so cool.
So I'm finally glad that you're on the podcast because I kept saying Chris is going to come, Chris, and then I never scheduled it last year. So here we are. Just took
I'm
some
glad I'm
time.
here.
Yes, perfect timing. Everything is about timing. So, I would love to hear your heartbeat behind it because being an expert in leadership and that being my education background and loving it so much, and
Hmm.
wanting people to just know who their best selves are. When I read through it, I was like, this is such a good practical manual of how not only for yourself, but for work culture and the
Mm.
people around you. So would love to hear your heartbeat and maybe out of all your principles, there's a lot of them, but what your
Hmm.
favorite one is.
Hmm. Mm. Well, I just feel really honored, so I really appreciate it. When I wrote it, it was because I could see people struggling trying to improve different parts of how they showed up as a leader or their team or their business. And first of all, no right answer. There's no right. It's about what's going to work for you and the team and all that. And that's the rightest answer is doing that yourself. So giving yourself permission for that. But the other thing is, I just wanted to have something where, and one of the people gave me feedback that one of the pre-readers said, I felt like you were sitting with me at the kitchen table and talking with me. I'm like, that's what I want. I'm
Yes.
tired of leadership books that are like, I climbed Kilimanjaro, you can too, just be like me. Or the one that's like, here's how to go do a firm handshake, or here's how to slay someone in a business deal. I'm like, we don't need those. I don't need those.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have something that was connecting how I show up individually, which I'm in a lot of control of, but probably look at last. The relationships that I'm building and connecting with people and honoring them in a way that we can go do work together, not just, do you want another latte? It's like,
Mm,
how do I partner with you in service to something that's bigger than all of us? And how do we all do that? And then, oh, by the way, let's make this place run decently so we're not wasting a lot and we're on the right track. So those are all the pieces of Ripple. I think the real core that I would say in the whole book, I wrote a section called Trust or Have Nothing.
mm,
And the picture is actually these hands kind of shaking. And I mean, without trust, we don't have a relationship. There's no way you can access what you can do and I can access what I can do. In fact, I might not even trust myself. That's a whole nother issue. But we're
mm,
certainly not going to go make the place better because we have different ideas. And if you don't feel trusted, it's gonna you're just gonna diminish to the point where you're probably gonna leave. And we're not building on each other's strengths. We're sort of sapping each other. So I think it really comes down to that. And the other part of that is the person with authority and privilege, person in a leadership position, has to go first. Has to
mm.
go first. Because if you don't have that privilege or authority, earned or unearned, you know, you're not going to hear, you're not going to be able to be heard. Oh yeah, I'd like to try. Let me be even more vulnerable. You have authority or power or something over me. I'm going to come up to you and say, hey, I think this is something we need to do better. You're
Mhm.
going to be like, who are you? I mean, you and I would be nice about it. We'd say, what do you mean? Right. But most
Yeah.
people, they are so conditioned by what happens when you do that. When somebody has authority, what are you supposed to do?
Hmm.
And so I really, really think it's critical for people who have any kind of, authority. And I don't mean like a badge. I mean, do I have a formal position? Am I responsible for feedback? Do I actually, do I have purse strings? There's a lot of ways people can have sort of authority that makes someone feel less than. How do we make
Hmm.
us come to partnership? Nobody's better or worse than anybody else, in my opinion. We're just different. How do
Hmm.
we respect these differences and what's bigger than us? So that trust piece is so vital. And I feel really fortunate that in the first 10, 12 years, I probably had some people that just really didn't trust. They didn't trust themselves, frankly, and they didn't trust
Hmm.
others. Usually it's some vulnerability. When people aren't trusting, it's their own vulnerability that they're trying to hide, my opinion.
Hmm.
But getting to a place where I can be open and really trust people with my heartstrings and things that matter to me, we can go do great stuff together because they know I got them too.
So good. So good. I love that I've written in it. I've highlighted in it,
Oh,
like you
that's what I'm
told
so
me
glad.
to. I know.
Yes,
I remember when you introduced the book, you're like, I wish it wasn't hardcover. I wish it was like more messy so that you could actually, I want you to use it. So I was like, I'm going to use it. So I did.
awesome. A plus.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And anyways, we will make sure again that's in the show notes. We'll also link back to the other episodes that we had in the fall. Or I think it was
Cool.
like in November, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It feels like a long time ago, but it's not too long. I'd
I
love to see a
know.
picture without any disclosing information of all the messiness. It would be so cool because that's what leadership's about. It's messy. There's no right
Yeah.
answer, and figuring it out and then making it better and better. I think that's what we're all called to do.
Exactly. I will get a picture of it. Yeah, I think I love saying we're perfectly imperfect. Like we are made
Mm,
with all these beautiful imperfections and that's truly our like secret sauce to who we are. And I think the world tells us that it shouldn't be accepted or shouldn't be this. But the
right.
reality is that's what makes us us, right? And so
Totally.
um anyone as a leader if you're out there leading a team, wondering about work culture, just wanting to be a better leader, I really encourage you to look up Chris's book, The Ripple. I think it's just a great addition to. There's tons of questions in there to like work through. I know you even set it up where you can potentially like work through it in a group manner or
Yeah.
discussion, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
So yeah, there's all that there. But I just want to encourage people, especially this month as well, too, is to find those rhythms. Drink more water. Maybe go out for a walk. Do
Yeah.
something
Work with
for
the
your
trainer.
yeah. I'm telling you, it's
Have
crazy
fun.
when yeah, have fun with it. It doesn't have to be crazy. Just start somewhere. And then I love that you mentioned that if it's not working, like change it and don't see that as a failure. Just change it and try something new. So I like
Nice.
that too.
Cool.
Uh, okay, so I could talk to you for hours.
I
Um,
I could too. This is just great. I just so appreciate your energy and your desire to help people. It's so clear. It's like oozing out it. No, it's broadcasting out it. Not
thank
oozing.
you. Thank you.
Shining out of it.
I always tell people, yeah, to radiate. So I try to, radiate,
Radiating out of you.
radiate.
That's the word. Right. There you go.
Right.
You are radiant.
Um, Before we move to the one last thing to live by, which I love to end our podcast, I would be so curious what your top three core values are.
Well, my top value is unconditional love.
Okay.
And sometimes I can struggle doing that for myself. And I really need to do that first to be able to do that with others. I think and when I say integrity, it's not just my words match my thoughts, match my deeds kind of thing, but match who I am. So when
Yeah.
I'm in full integrity, it's how am I being me without,
Hmm.
inflicting myself on others and doing so in a way that really brings out the best in myself and others. And the third core value, my son and I were talking about this, and he interviewed my wife and me separately and got together and said, "You guys have the same core values. What is that?" You know, it's really about interdependence and community. It's that we need each
Mm,
other,
yeah.
and what we create together, and how are we depending on each other in a way that creates a greater whole. That's the top three for me.
I love it. I harp on this podcast over and over, and just to my team, that you should always know your core values, because if you're grounded in your values, you can say your best yeses and your best nos. And like it
Mm,
really changes the way you lead yourself, your team, and just how you maneuver through life. Right. So thanks for sharing that.
you're welcome. I'll look
I
through
love
that.
those.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna, I say mine all the time, but
Okay,
this is
I'll go
about
look at
you.
mine. Yeah.
I will say my top value though is authenticity,
Mm,
transparency, and for sure community as well. Um, and then I love a side of spontaneity. I realized
mm,
that one of my values was spontaneity, and I was suppressing that so much, like because I had a busy schedule and all this stuff. And so I changed the way that I schedule things so that I have some rhythm, or I have some room to be spontaneous if I want to.
that's
Because
so key.
yeah,
Yeah, good for you.
yeah,
Good for you.
brings me a lot of joy. Okay, so tell us, for all of our listeners here at the Moxie Podcast, what is one last thing to live by?
Dum, dum, dum. At my sabbatical this year, I really came to a new understanding of how important belonging is for everyone and mattering. And up to recently, and it's still a pattern in my life of that, I would put belonging above agreeing when we actually, I think we need belonging when we don't agree. And so I'm
Mhm.
trying to make space for people I don't agree with. I'm trying to listen to more things and really let them know that to me they belong. They totally matter. We're not kicking them off the island. Um, Whether that's family members or team members or just people I just know. I think that's really important that we live our lives. I mean, imagine the harmony we would have if
Mhm.
belonging didn't have to have agreement. We'd really hear where people disagree, but we'd all still be in the same thing together.
I love it. And it goes back to unconditionally loving, integrity, and
Mhm.
community.
Interdependence and community,
Yeah,
it's all there. So
that's
I
good.
wish that people are able to live their best lives, with maybe that as part of what they get to do.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, thank you so much for coming and being a part of our Moxie community. And for all of you listening, we'll have everything we mentioned, anything in the show notes. So check that out there. And as always, as I always say, Moxie on.